Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask Father Rob, where you send in questions and I try to answer them here on the television program. This afternoon's question comes from a viewer in Piqua. It's sort of a follow-up question to the conversation that I had with Bishop Tom Breidenthal a few weeks ago. She asked, is God responsible for evil? The short answer to this is no. The longer answer is that God created in us the opportunity to choose to do evil. Let me explain what I mean by that. God gave to us, you and me, free will. The free will to choose what we want to have to eat for lunch. The free will to choose who we want to marry. The free will to choose whether or not we want to do good or evil. God gave us the gift of free will so that we could experience true love with God. Let me explain what I mean by that. Imagine, if you will, that you had the power to hypnotize people, and you hypnotized someone else to make them love you. They had no choice but to love you. That wouldn't be real love. It might look like real love, might sound like it, but it wouldn't be real. The same way that you can't force people or blackmail people or extort people or compel people to love you against their will. They have to choose to love you. That's what makes the love real. God gave to us that same ability to choose to love God or to not love God, so that the love that we share would be real. Now, unfortunately, with that free will comes the opportunity to choose not to love God, to not to listen to God's commandments, to do things that are evil and harmful to one another. And as you and I both well know, we all often choose not to do that. Now, does that make God responsible for the choices that we make? Well, I suppose no more than one could say that the owner of a hardware store, if he sells you a hammer and instead of building something good, you go out and clock someone over the head and steal their wallet, is responsible for the choices you make. The gift of free will was supposed to be for us to be able to do good things. It's our decisions that that cause these evil things to happen, and we can't hold God morally responsible for that. Now, a follow-up question might be, well, doesn't God care that this situation that God created is causing so much pain and hardship? The answer is, of course God cares, and we can see that in Scripture. God came to us and gave to us the Ten Commandments, the rules for how we should be choosing to use that free will and give us direction in that way. He sent us prophets. He sent us scholars, all of whom who came here and told us, look, you're not doing the right thing. You've got to be listening to God's laws. You've got to change your ways. And finally, in the fullness of time, as we say each Sunday morning, God sent God's only Son, Jesus Christ, to not only instruct us on what God really means about how we should be loving our neighbors and loving God, but ultimately to die on the cross and live again, so that despite the fact that we exercise our free will in terrible, horrible ways, we can still enjoy the love and salvation of God. That's a really big answer, a really big response from God for a situation that really is not God's responsibility. And it shows to us the depth of God's love for us. Now, as always, there's lots of questions about evil and why evil happens. And unfortunately, I think some of it's inexplicable. I don't know why sometimes even I choose to do evil acts. Sometimes it makes sense at the time, and later on I look back and I think that was a terrible thing to do. Other times it just doesn't make sense. There's a certain inexplicability to our decisions that we make. But God sees that, knows what is in our hearts, and yet continues to love each and every one of us every single day. Thanks for the great question. You can send your questions here to Ask Father Rob, care of St. James Episcopal Church, 200 West High Street, Piqua, Ohio, 45356. Or you can email them to us at stjamespiqua, that's stjamespiqua @yahoo.com. Or you can just drop them by our church office. Feel free to come on down anytime and have a chance to drop off a question, see the church, and learn a little bit more about us here. Keep sending in those questions, and I look forward to seeing you here each and every day.